You arrive just before dawn, when the sea is still muttering secrets in its sleep. The air tastes faintly of salt and warm wood smoke. You're in Berbera, a Somali port town curled up along the Gulf of Aden like a cat that's seen many lifetimes. There are no crowds yet, just the slow creaking of dhows shifting in the harbor and the occasional grunt of a camel disagreeing with a load of dried fish. You walk down a sandy alley that hasn't been repaved since the Thais, medieval Adrian Sultanate, ruled these shores. The walls on either side lean slightly inward, whispering to one another. They're made of coral stone, yes, literal coral, yanked up from the reef and repurposed as infrastructure. It's beautiful and a bit confusing, like building a shed out of seashells and expecting it to survive a monsoon. A boy yawns from the doorway of a spice shop. He's already dusted cinnamon over the threshold, an old tradition set to confuse bad spirits and tourists with allergies. The smell is warm and familiar, like the inside of a cake or a grandmother's hug dot. It's the 14th century, or maybe the 15th. Historians still argue about when exactly this trade boom began in full. But today, you'll be shadowing a Somali sailor as he prepares to leave port for India. He's not famous. He's not a king. He doesn't even own his own boat. But he knows the stars like some people know the back of their hand, or at least the back of a well-worn prayer bead. You probably won't make it through this day. That's fine. It wasn't built for hustle. If you like stories where absolutely nothing explodes and no one talks too loudly, go ahead and like this video. Subscribe, if you haven't already, for more tales told at the speed of moss. And drop a comment with your location and local time. We love seeing where in the world you're drifting off from. Now let's ease into tonight's journey. One slow wave at a time. You step aboard the dhow just as the sun brushes the horizon, painting the water the color of warm tea. The sailor you're following, his name is Warsome, is tying knots in a rope so casually it feels like a nervous habit. He nods at you without smiling, but you can tell he's pleased you're here. Or at least that you're not screaming. The crew moves like one body, barefoot, quiet, half asleep. This is not their first voyage. The ship smells like cardamom, sweat, and something slightly fermented. Possibly dates. Possibly hope. You settle in near the stern where the tiller is, trying not to look too modern. Warsome reaches into a pouch tied to his waist and pulls out a small leather-bound book. Except it's not really a book. It's a bundle of folded fabric with hand-stitched stars on it, his personal sky map. Each star has a name. Some are named after animals, others after body parts. One, confusingly, is called The One Who Forgets Where He's Going, which feels personal. As the dhow begins to slide from the port, creaking against the tide, Warsome hums. Not a song, exactly, just a pattern. It rises and falls like a lullaby half remembered from childhood. It turns out, Somali sailors don't just read the stars, they sing to them. The melodies aren't written down. They're passed between generations, like soup recipes or mildly offensive jokes. Today's major historical fact: the Somali Maritime network once stretched from Mozambique to China. This wasn't some sleepy backwater. It was the Wi-Fi of its time, if Wi-Fi also included sea monsters and extremely opinionated merchants. You pass a small fishing boat, its nets slung like sleepy hammocks over the side. A man waves lazily, then returns to picking seaweed from his toes. That's the pace of life here. Efficient, if not overly ambitious. The wind picks up slightly, and the triangular sail above you billows with the grace of a grandmother's skirt. You lean back, watching the coastline melt into sky, and realize that you haven't heard a single shout. No barking orders. No clanging bells. Just that soft hum from Warsome and the occasional creak of wood remembering it's alive. Eventually, someone brings you a coconut with a straw stabbed into it. It's not fancy. It's just considerate. The crew operates on a logic of mutual quietness, where kindness is shown through useful objects and non-intrusive glances. Try that next time you're at a dinner party. The dhow glides forward. The stars above are starting to wink awake. Warsome points to a faint cluster low on the horizon. Those, he says in a voice so gentle it's practically mossy, are the sleeping camels. When they disappear, we turn north. You nod, pretending to understand. The stars don't look like camels. They barely look like dots. But they're telling a story, and that's enough. You start to notice something curious. The sailors talk to the stars, but they don't beg them. There's no pleading for mercy or good weather. Just small jokes, casual greetings, and the occasional complaint about how the one who forgets where he's going keeps drifting to the left. Honestly same, the dhow slides deeper into the Gulf. A few seabirds wheel overhead, confused by the lack of drama. You nestle against a coil of rope and breathe in the salty dusk. Everything feels slightly suspended, like a nap just before it starts. Some scholars believe these oral star maps were partly metaphor-coded, lullabies for those too young to sail but old enough to listen. Others think the melodies had mathematical logic hidden inside them, patterns guiding direction like a GPS in disguise. But no one agrees entirely. Historians still debate whether these songs were meant to soothe or navigate or both. You drift, lulled by a world where stars are names, the wind is an opinion, and the sea never rushes. Night folds in like a soft blanket. The sky turns navy, then charcoal, and finally the color of deep tea left too long in the pot. The dhow sails on, quiet. As ever, its hull cutting a faint line through the starlit sea. You lie on your back now, staring up. The stars are brighter out here, like someone turned up the contrast on reality. Warsome sits beside you, peeling dried mango with a knife so small it seems decorative. He eats in silence. You do too. It's not awkward. It's just the kind of silence that doesn't need to be filled. He tells you, eventually, that when he was a boy, he learned to match stars to flavors. Some were bitter, like unripe tamarind. Others were sweet, like roasted millet. He swears there's one star that tastes exactly like fish grilled too long on a fire with wet wood. You laugh a little, and he smiles, barely. Tonight's major historical fact: medieval Somali sailors were fluent in multiple Indian Ocean languages, including Swahili, Arabic, Gujarati, and Persian. This made them expert middlemen and also very good at collecting gossip. Speaking of gossip, a crew member leans over and tells you, in a whisper so faint it may be imaginary, that the star cluster ahead was once used to time bedtime stories. When the two gossiping wives pass directly overhead, it means it's time to stop telling stories and start dreaming them. No one seems to follow the rule anymore, but it's still nice to know. The dhow passes a faint shadow, another boat, smaller and slower, possibly returning from Oman. The two ships don't hail each other. No lanterns waved. Just a nod from sail to sail. A silent, you exist, and that's nice. The air is cooler now, and you pull a shawl around your shoulders that you don't remember picking up. It smells like salt and cumin, possibly magic, possibly someone's laundry. Warson taps the mast with the back of his knife. It's a subtle signal. Everyone begins to prepare the night songs. Yes, night songs. You didn't think this was a one-hymn operation, did you? Each sailor takes a turn humming a tune from his own village. They're all a little different, but they all share the same sleepy rhythm. Some of them include lyric soft nonsense about lost goats, moon-shaped bread, and a fish who wants to be a priest. Others are just melodic sighs. It's like a mixtape made entirely by grandfathers. Warson's song tonight is slower than the rest. He says it's from a coastal village where the boats were so small they had to talk to the sea before getting in, to ask permission, he says, and to apologize in advance. The dhow leans slightly into a breeze, almost as if listening. An obscure cultural tidbit. In some Somali seafaring communities, it was considered unlucky to bring mirrors on board. Reflections could confuse the stars, they said, or worse, invite them to stare back. You look over the edge of the boat just to be sure. The sea reflects nothing. Just ink and motion. A bell dings quietly, not an alarm. Just a suggestion that tea might be available. You sip from a wooden cup passed hand to hand. It's spiced with cardamom and something unidentifiable, possibly crushed nostalgia. You're not sure. Historians still debate whether the poetic names of Somali constellations were invented by sailors or borrowed from inland poets trying to be helpful. The answer, naturally, is probably both and neither. Like all good mysteries, this one refuses to stand still. The stars ripple overhead. Someone snores gently. A rope thunks. A sail adjusts with a sigh. You lie back, full of nothing but warm tea and soft air. You may not remember any of this tomorrow, but for now you're afloat on stories sung between constellations, in a boat older than most empires, under a sky that never needed fixing. You wake, or maybe you never really slept. It's hard to tell when dreams hum in tune with the waves. The night sky has tilted just slightly, like someone nudged the whole universe a few degrees to the left while you weren't looking. Warsome is at the prow again, humming a different song now. This one's older, slower. It sounds like something you'd sing to a very tired goat, or a child who won't sleep unless told 3 stories and half a lie. You stretch, careful not to disturb the coil of rope you're using as a pillow. Your joints pop like old wood. No one notices. Or if they do, they assume it's the boat talking through you. The sea is glass now pure, motionless calm. The kind of stillness that makes you feel like you're standing still and the earth is moving instead. Which, to be fair, is technically true. But you didn't come here for astrophysics. You came to float gently across centuries. Today's major historical fact: Somali dhows weren't nailed together. They were stitched. Yes, stitched, like clothing. Coconuts were involved. You can't make this up. Builders used fibers from coconut husks, soaked them in oil, and used them to sew wooden planks together with astonishing strength. It's like if IKEA furniture had emotions and resilience. One of the sailors is polishing the ship's prow with a handful of crushed leaves. The scent wafts over, something sharp, something green, something that says, mosquitoes are not welcome here. Warsome tells you it's called zanaf, and it's been used for centuries. Repels insects and supposedly bad luck. But mostly insects dot as the morning star dips away. Another crewman points to a new cluster overhead. The grandmother's comb, he says. It's shaped like a wooden comb used in village braiding ceremonies. Or at least, it is if you squint hard enough and want it to be. There's a story that if you name all the stars in that comb without forgetting one, you'll dream of your oldest ancestor, who will gently scold you for staying up so late. A pot rattles near the stern. Breakfast is happening in its usual wordless, considerate way. Flatbread. A stew with more spice than ambition. A handful of roasted chickpeas you swear you didn't see anyone cook. You eat with your hands. Not because you have to, but because the food somehow tastes more trustworthy that way. The sailors laugh softly about something. You don't catch the joke, but it seems to involve a parrot and someone falling off a barrel. A few of them are carving small bits of wood charms, they call them. Not religious, not magic. Just reminders. One sailor carves a wave. Another, a goat's head. Warsome carves a fish with a slightly judgmental expression. You try not to take it personally. The wind shifts. A sail is adjusted with all the urgency of someone changing bedsheets on a lazy Sunday. The dhow corrects its course, ever so slightly following. Not a compass, but a cloud. Apparently, certain clouds mean land. Certain winds mean fish. Certain birds mean your aunt is talking about you again. An obscure tidbit. In some Somali seafaring households, dreams were considered part of a sailor's toolkit. Before long voyages, families would gather to tell their weirdest dreams, just in case they were prophetic. It was like a strategy meeting, but with more goats and floating bananas. Warsome tells you that once, before his first voyage, his sister dreamt he got married to a star and never came back. He still sends her clumps of stardust made from seashells and ash. She pretends to be annoyed. Historians still debate whether these dream gatherings were purely symbolic or part of a larger belief system that tied navigation to divination. Some scholars call it astromysticism. Others call it familial anxiety with better lighting. The sun starts its lazy climb up the sky. The shadows retreat. Someone's sandal falls overboard, and no one reacts. It's just accepted. The ocean takes what it likes. You lie back again, using your arm as a pillow this time, and close your eyes to the soft sounds of wind, rope, and old lullabies. You're not sure if you're learning or dreaming, and really, does it matter? By midday, the heat settles over the dhow like a thick blanket with opinions. The kind of heat that doesn't scream but sighs loudly. The crew moves more slowly now, each motion precise, efficient, and deeply unbothered. You find shade beneath a worn bit of canvas. It smells faintly of salt and cumin, like everything else on this boat. Your body melts into the wood, your mind. Slightly squishy with warmth and rhythm, Warsome sits beside you, fanning himself with a bit of woven palm leaf. He offers you a story instead of a conversation, because talking requires effort and stories do most of the work themselves. He tells you about a night he sailed toward Zanzibar using only a song his grandfather taught him. The lyrics included a crab, 3 sarcastic owls, and a banana that could taste lies. By verse 7, the boat had turned east without a single mistake, or so he claims. You raise an eyebrow. He shrugs. Today's major historical fact: Somali. Sailors had oral calendars built around the wind's monsoons, named and memorized like characters in a slow-moving drama. There's the Kusi, the southern wind of summer, and the Gu, softer and more forgiving, like a sigh between seasons. Entire sailing routes were built around them. Nearby, a young sailor naps with a bowl of dates balanced precariously on his stomach. Not a care in the world. Every so often, someone walks past and carefully eats one without waking him. It's basically trust fall snacking. Warsome points to a tiny cluster of dots on his cloth map. Those, he says, are the brothers who never agree. If they're visible this early, the current's going to be fussy. You look at the stars. They look back, smugly. A quiet conversation breaks out about whether the crew should adjust course slightly. No one argues. They just compare memories and songs until consensus floats to the surface like a lazy jellyfish. You don't notice the decision being made. It's already happening. An obscure detail some sailors used to write small poems and tuck them into the ship's woodwork for good luck. Not full poems, just opening lines. That way, if anything went wrong, the ocean could finish the verse and maybe go easier on them. Warsome hums another tune, this one slower, sleepier. You ask what it means. He says it's for the days when nothing changes. Important days. He adds, you remember them best. A pot clinks. Tea again. Always tea. This one has a hint of ginger and what might be dried lime peel, or possibly sadness. It's hard to say, but it's warming either way. A small commotion. Someone spots a dolphin. Everyone nods solemnly, as if it just offered them financial advice. You smile. Then you yawn. The sky hums above. Historians still debate whether Somali sailors had fixed roles like navigator, cook, weather reader, or if everyone simply shared all tasks with practiced fluidity. The evidence points both ways, like a ship with commitment. Issues. The afternoon passes slowly. A bird lands on the mast and glares at you with the judgment of a disappointed librarian. Then it leaves, probably muttering. You fall asleep with your back against the mast and your mind full of wind names and lullabies about fish with secret lives. You dream of boats that never dock, songs with no last verse, and a sky that never runs out of stars. It's a good dream. You'll stay here a while longer. You wake to the sound of fabric whispering in the windsails adjusting themselves, as if the dhow has its own opinions on where you ought to go. You're not sure how long you've slept. The sun has softened, dipping just low enough to paint everything gold. Even the tea kettle gleams like it's had a promotion. Your back aches in a familiar way, the kind of ache that says, yes, you're still on a boat. Congratulations. Warsom's sitting nearby, peeling a mango with something that looks more like a fishing knife than a fruit tool. Somehow he doesn't cut himself. You, however, manage to get mango juice on your shirt just by watching. He offers you a slice and points out toward the faint shadow of land on the horizon. Might be Socotra, he says, or a very shy cloud pretending to be useful. You squint. It could be either. Today's major historical fact: Somali sailors, especially those headed toward Yemen or Oman, often stopped at Socotra. The island was a critical trade stop, known not just for frankincense and myrrh, but also for something called dragon's blood. Not from an actual dragon, though that would be excellent, but from a tree that bleeds red sap, thick and bitter. It was used in medicine, dyes, and occasionally love potions that worked only if you were very patient. A crewman fans a little brazier, releasing a curl of frankincense smoke that drifts through the dhow. It smells like old temples and politely hidden secrets. Warsom nods approvingly. Keeps the spirits calm, he says. And the goats when we used to bring them. You don't see any goats now, but you believe him anyway. The afternoon deepens into that dreamy, directionless time where light stretches and shadows start writing poetry on the sails. A sailor nearby hums a lullaby with no real beginning or end. It's the kind of tune that might follow you into sleep and tap you gently on the shoulder at 3.m. Obscure cultural tidbit. In certain coastal Somali communities, it was believed that the wind had moods, and each wind preferred specific songs. The wrong melody could offend it. The right one could bring you home faster. Entire songbooks existed for different currents, practical, beautiful, and probably more effective than your phone's GPS. A soft laugh rolls across the boat as someone tells a story about a sailor who got caught singing the wrong song for a southern wind and ended up circling the Horn of Africa 3 times before anyone noticed. Possibly apocryphal. Possibly hilarious. Historians still debate whether the wind-singing tradition was meant literally, or if it was simply a metaphorical way of teaching sailors to listen to rhythms, to changes, to silence. Either way, it makes you wonder what your own wind might prefer. The dhow shifts again, just slightly. You feel it before you see it. The crew doesn't say much. They rarely do. They've been reading the water all day, the same way others read books or facial expressions. You wonder if the ocean speaks a language that only sails can hear. Someone passes you a roasted peanut. Just one, a small gift. It crunches like it means something as twilight folds its sky like a worn but well-loved blanket. You feel something ancient hum in your chest. Not fear, not joy. Something between the two, a sleepy awe that says, this has happened before, and it will happen again. You lean against the mast and let it all unfold around you. Night again, though it never fully left. Out here, darkness arrives like an old friend slipping into the room without knocking. No drama, no fuss, just presence. The sky is thick with stars, so many that it feels like the heavens dropped their inventory and didn't bother picking it up. The sails are trimmed. The dhow rocks softly, almost imperceptibly. There's no need to steer for now. The ocean knows the way better than anyone on board. You're handed a warm cup. The crew calls it shakad, which translates to white tea, though it's more like a cinnamon hug in a mug. Sweet, creamy, spiced. You sip, and your eyes close for a moment without permission. Tonight's major historical fact: Somali sailors were among the first to bring cardamom and cinnamon from South Asia into East Africa. Their trade routes stitched across the Indian Ocean long before European ships even dared leave sight of land. The spice trade wasn't just profitable, it was poetic. Spices were conversation starters, love letters, peace offerings. Warsome once claimed cinnamon could stop arguments if brewed strong enough. The crew hums low songs as they work, each task wrapped in rhythm, each knot tied like a lyric. You find yourself tapping along, though you don't know the words. Doesn't matter. The dhow doesn't need lyrics to keep time. Nearby, someone opens a weathered satchel and pulls out a bundle wrapped in old cloth. Inside are story tokens, small carvings used to tell tales. A miniature fish, a crooked boat, a cloud with eyes. They're passed around slowly, and with each token comes a few lines of a story. One token per twist. Obscure detail, some Somali. Sailors believed you could store dreams in carved wood. Not whole dreams, just the parts that mattered. If you lost the carving, the dream would eventually come true, but never in the way you expected. Tonight's story is about a sailor who falls in love with a whale. Not romantically, more like companionship. They swim together each night. He gives her songs. She gives him direction. One day he forgets her name, and she leads him home anyway. Some in the crew find it funny. Others are quiet. Historians still debate whether these oral stories served educational purposes, teaching navigation, safety, diplomacy, or whether they were simply a way to pass time under starlight. But does it really need to be either-or? The dhow drifts over a patch of sea that's almost too calm. The stars reflect so perfectly that you feel caught between two skies, suspended in a poem. You lie back again, resting your head against a coil of rope that someone tucked a cloth over, like a pillow reserved just for you. Thoughtful sailors, these. A quiet breeze brushes your face, and you remember something Warsome said earlier. A sailor doesn't command the sea. He asks, very politely. It's the politeness that gets you. You murmur a thank you, just in case the sea is listening. You drift off again, this time gently, without effort, as if the dhow has decided to sail not just through water, but through sleep itself. The last thing you hear is someone quietly reciting star names like a bedtime spell. You don't catch them all. That's okay. The sea remembers you. Wake sometime just before dawn, not because anything is loud far from it, but because the silence has grown so deep it feels like a sound itself. The air is cool, edged with salt and something that smells faintly of cardamom bread or maybe just memory. The dhow rocks in place like it, too, is dreaming. You sit up slowly, not out of urgency, but because the wood under you seems to sigh when you move, and you don't want to wake the boat too fast. The sky is a deep blue velvet curtain, slowly peeling open from the bottom edge. Most of the crew is still asleep, scattered in comfortable piles, limbs flopped like lazy cats. Warsome, however, is awake. Of course he is. He hands you a cup of something warm without a word. You nod. It's the kind of friendship where no one needs to ask what kind of tea this is. You just drink it and accept that it's the right kind. Today's major historical fact. Somali dhows often carried not just cargo, but letters wrapped in oiled parchment, sealed with twine, and tucked into carved compartments along the keel. These weren't government letters, but personal ones. Love notes, apologies, recipes, dreams. Sometimes even a single sentence like, "I saw a fish that reminded me of your mother." The ocean was a better postal service than anyone gave it. Credit for that you sip. The tea is ginger heavy, with a sleepy sweetness. Someone behind you stirs, mutters a few words to no one, and turns over. The sea answers with a soft SHUSH dot off the port side. A school of silver fish flickers by, all moving as one, like gossip. Warsome watches them without blinking. When they move like that, he says, it means a big ship passed by hours ago. Or a shark who doesn't like company. He doesn't specify which he'd prefer. Neither do you. Obscure tidbit. In some parts of coastal East Africa, fish were believed to carry ancestral memories. Certain elders claimed if you whispered your question into the tide and a silver fish jumped, your answer was yes. If it didn't jump, your answer was maybe. If it pooped, well, then your question was probably rude. The sea glows. Faintly with pre-sunrise colors now, hints of peach, smudges of rose, streaks of color that feel more emotional than visual. It's like the world is getting embarrassed by its own beauty and trying not to make eye contact. Warsome leans back against a barrel and begins to tell a new story. This one involves a sailor who forgot which stars were real and which were just reflected on the sea. He ended up steering toward the upside-down sky and sailed for 3 days before realizing the moon had been trailing him on both sides. He didn't mind, Warsome adds. He said it was the quietest voyage of his life. Historians still debate whether early star navigation included mirrored constellations, recognizing not only what was above, but what appeared below in the reflection. Some argue it was a poetic interpretation of the sea's surface. Others say sailors just liked having backup stars in case the originals were busy. You lie down again. The deck is warmer now, gently absorbing the day's first promise. You're lulled by the creak of wood, the hush of rope, and the feeling that this dhow isn't just a boat, it's an old, tired friend that knows how to carry stories without dropping them. Somewhere, someone starts a soft melody with a reed flute. It has 3 notes. That's it. But somehow, those 3 notes sound like everything you've ever wanted to remember. You smile. Then you sleep again. When you wake, it's full morning. A soft, thoughtful kind of morning. The sky is white-blue, the water gentle enough to pretend it's doing you a favor. You stretch. The sun hits your back like a sleepy cat curling up just under your shoulder blades. Warm, welcome, and just a bit heavy. The crew is up now, but there's no rush. Everyone moves like they're underwater, in that delicate tempo where speed is suspicious and patience is currency. You sit with a bowl of something you can't name. It's sticky, sweet, a little smoky. Someone says it's made from ground millet and dates boiled in seawater, but that could be a joke or a challenge. You eat it anyway. It tastes like if porridge went on a spiritual retreat. Today's major historical fact: long-distance Somali sailors often trained their children in storytelling before navigation. It was believed that anyone could learn wind patterns, but few could keep a crew sane over 3 months at sea. Stories were tools, not decoration. A good tale could delay homesickness, distract from storms, or remind everyone what waited on shore. A sailor beside you braids his beard. Another trims a piece of driftwood into what might be a small camel, or possibly a very confident chicken. Someone else teaches a younger crewmate how to tie a knot that has no practical purpose except being funny to undo. Obscure detail. Certain knots were considered joke knots, used only during calm weather and meant to tie someone's sleeping blanket to a mast or create a loop that turned into a bracelet when pulled the wrong way. Entire games were played with these knots, some of which are still used today in quiet harbors and mischievous dreams. Warson joins you with a scroll well. Not really a scroll. More like a rolled-up bit of waxed fabric with faint ink lines showing trade stops and star names. He unrolls it slowly, like revealing a punchline. "See this?" he says, pointing to a mark shaped like a turtle. "That's where my uncle says the sky begins. You nod like that makes perfect sense. He tells you of the time they sailed so far east, they reached the place where the moon rises red. It's just an illusion, he admits. But it scared the fish. Historians still debate whether such maps were symbolic or literal. Some marks denoted real reefs or wind shifts. Others were dream places, spots remembered only in song or described in grandmother riddles. One mark, shaped like a teacup, might represent a harbor, or a particularly good pot of chai someone once had there. Accuracy was important, but so was flavor. You feel the ship shift course again, almost imperceptibly. Someone laughs. Someone else sneezes into a scarf. The sea replies with a splash. Indifferent but polite. The wind picks up just a bit, not enough to rush, just enough to remind you that you're still moving. Always moving, and the dhow sails on, carrying you not toward a destination, but deeper, into a kind of timeless rhythm, where night and day blur and stories do the steering. You close your eyes for a moment, just a moment. The sea takes it from there. You wake to find the world wrapped in gold. The sun, now confident and well caffeinated, hangs over the dhow like an easy-going supervisor watching, not intervening. The sea glitters in all directions, too bright to look at directly, like it's showing off just a little. But you forgive it. It's earned the drama. You sit up and find your blanket has somehow folded itself back over you. Warsome walks by, casually, flipping a piece of dried fish in the air and catching it with theatrical boredom. You missed breakfast, he says. But not the second breakfast. A plate materializes. There are dates, a thin flatbread, and something that might be coconut or might be very sleepy cheese. The dhow sails smoothly now, carried by a current the crew seems to recognize by smell or instinct or shared dream. No one speaks of where you're headed because it doesn't really matter. The journey itself has become the destination, a phrase that feels a little cliché until you're actually living it. With sea breeze in your mouth and no deadlines in sight. Today's major historical fact: Somali sailors once traded as far as the Malabar coast, China, and even Indonesia. Their voyages weren't just economic, they brought back art styles, musical instruments, and even recipes that became local staples. A sweet coconut rice still served in some Somali homes is said to be adapted from a Javanese dish, though no one argues about the coconut content anymore. It's perfect. You bite into a date. It's soft, sun-warm, and tastes like the memory of afternoon naps. Nearby, a crew member plays a rhythm on the hull using only his fingers. It's simple, repetitive, and oddly mesmerizing, like the sea is echoing back in percussion. Others join in with small instruments, a clay pot drum, a stringed oud with only 3 working strings, and a seashell used purely for dramatic pauses. Obscure cultural tidbit: it was once believed that rhythm could influence wind. Not in a magical way exactly, but in a why not try it sort of way. Entire sailing songs were written with different tempos depending on the wind's laziness. A faster rhythm might coax it forward. A slower one could calm it when it got moody, Warsome hums a line from one of these songs. The words are hard to catch, but the melody carries a certain kind of hope. The kind of hope that doesn't need to be loud to be real. You ask what the words mean. He shrugs. They used to say the stars understand more than we do. Maybe the stars are the only ones who got the joke. Historians still debate whether these musical practices were strategic or ceremonial, or simply ways to make long days feel a little shorter. But there's something quietly powerful about a culture that sings not just during the journey, but to it. You lean against the edge of the boat and watch the sails stretch forward, catching wind like hands catching a promise. The sun warms your face. You let yourself drift, not quite asleep, but somewhere close. That peaceful middle ground where you forget your own name for a second, and it feels like a relief. Somewhere in the rhythm, you hear laughter. Not loud, not pointed, just happy. Like someone told a story that didn't need a punchline. And the dhow keeps moving, wrapped in music, warmed by the past. This time, you wake not from sound or silence, but from the smell of citrus. It hits you gently, like a polite messenger who knocks just once and waits. There's a basket beside you, filled with what look like tiny limes, except they're orange on the inside and smell like a day off. One of the younger crew members grins and slices one open with a flourish that suggests this is a sacred fruit ceremony. He hands it to you like an offering. You taste. It's sweet, sour, and oddly fizzy, like it forgot whether it wanted to be serious or fun. Today's major historical fact: during the 10th and 11th centuries, Somali sailors were famed not just for their seamanship, but for their citrus preserves. They created brined lemon rinds, sun-dried orange peels, and something called limohus, a fermented lime paste used to flavor stews and, allegedly, cure both heartache and sea leg cramps. Whether that's medical or emotional is still up for debate. The crew prepares lunch around you. It's a slow, practiced affair. Lentils soaked in seawater, then boiled in a wide pan with bits of preserved lemon, garlic, and a dash of spice whose name no one agrees on. You watch as everything simmers together, the scent curling through the boat like a lazy cat. Obscure detail: one preserved lime stew recipe was once written into the margin of a sailor's journal, alongside a list of ship repairs and a poem. To someone named Fatima, who, judging by the meter, had fantastic eyebrows, Warsome points at the clouds, which have gathered into a shape he insists looks like a turtle chasing a violin. You don't see it, but nod anyway. The sea rewards a GREEABLENESS. After lunch, a game begins. Not with cards or dice, but with shells and shadows. It's part guessing, part storytelling. Someone places a shell on the deck. The others take turns explaining where it's been and what it's seen. One sailor claims the shell was once used to carry the whisper of a pirate king. Another says it holds the sigh of the sea's first wave. Historians still debate whether these games served a deeper function: ritual, record-keeping, or simply amusement during long waits for wind. Some suggest the stories helped encode sailing routes or weather signs. Others say sailors just liked messing with each other. The sun shifts westward again, tugging the sky into a softer hue. The sea turns a silky blue, like someone stirred honey into the horizon. A bird lands on the mast gray, tired and completely unimpressed with the crew. It glares at everyone like it was promised a luxury cruise and instead got this. Warsome feeds it a bit of lentil. It does not say thank you, but it stays. You close your eyes, just for a breath, just for a little while, and the dhow sails onward, dreamlike and certain, across an ocean older than memory, toward a story you haven't heard yet. You're woken, not by noise or light, but by a feeling that you're not quite where you were before. It's not disorienting. More like when you wake up on a train and realize the trees outside have changed. The air smells different. Not bad, just older. You sit up slowly. The dhow has anchored near a low, palm-strewn coastline. It's hard to tell where the beach ends and the forest begins. Everything's tangled in that quiet, slightly overgrown way that says you weren't expected. But you're welcome anyway. The crew moves with an unhurried grace. A few of them have tied bright cloths around their waists and set off toward shore, carrying baskets that clink gently. Someone mentions restocking dates. Someone else says the forest here hums at night. You stay behind for now, feet dangling over the edge of the boat like laundry. The tide sighs beneath you. Today's major historical fact. Ancient Somali port cities like Xyla and Hafun didn't just receive traders. They hosted entire visiting cultures. Indian, Yemeni, Persian, Swahili, even Chinese vessels stopped here for months at a time. Instead of waiting idly, visitors built temporary clay ovens on the beach, traded folk tales, and staged competitions, singing, cooking, even one-legged swimming races. The locals always won, mostly because they practiced. Someone offers you a piece of something wrapped in leaves. You taste it cautiously. It's soft, slightly floral, and tastes like rice pudding that's been kissed by lavender and smoke. You're told it's forest rice, and you nod like you knew that all along. Obscure cultural tidbit. In this region, it was once said that forest rice could only be made with water that had rested under moonlight. Whether this was culinary or just poetic remains unclear, but a few old recipes still recommend leaving the cooking pot out overnight to invite good dreams into the starch. Warsome returns from shore with a small clay bowl of something green and sharp-smelling. Mango lime paste, he explains, handing you a bit on flatbread. Used to be part of the port tax. You raise an eyebrow. He shrugs. They figured if your boat was big enough to trade ivory, it should be big enough to carry mangoes. Historians still debate how many of these coastal customs were formalized. Some port rituals were recorded in travelers' journals, others survive only in song and scent. And some were probably invented on the spot, because someone forgot the real rule and improvised with confidence. A soft breeze rises from inland, carrying the scent of wood smoke and wet bark. The trees rustle not like they're whispering, but like they're trying to remember the tune to a lullaby. You stretch your legs. The planks beneath you creak agreeably. A crew member nearby hums something under their breath, a tune without urgency, drifting back and forth like seaweed. The sun has tilted west again, folding the sky into warm gold and sleepy rose. You lie back. The wood smells like salt and lemon oil. You could almost swear the boat itself is purring, and somewhere in the forest a bird calls out not a warning, not a song, just a reminder that you're still here, and the dhow waits gently in this in-between place, where stories pause just long enough to take a nap. It's evening now. The sky is all amber and lavender, folded over itself like old silk. The dhow has pushed back out to open water, and the coastline slips away like a dream you didn't mean to wake from. You feel it before you see it, the subtle shift of the current beneath you, deeper now, cooler, pulling the boat forward with the kind of determination only water can have. You're back on deck, sipping something warm and spicy. Warsome calls it sleep broth. It smells like cinnamon, cardamom, maybe clove, and something mysteriously herbal that makes your eyelids heavier with every sip. Today's major historical fact. Ancient Somali navigators used not only stars, but watercolor and surface texture to determine their path. They'd toss small bits of cotton or leaf into the water to watch the current, read cloud reflections, and note bird patterns. A sailor could tell where they were based on the tone of the waves, how they sounded against the hull. No GPS, just a centuries-long conversation with the sea. Someone points out a cluster of stars rising in the east. You recognize none of them. Warsome names a few: Suganta, Ban, and something called the spoon that points backward. That last one might be a joke, obscure tidbit. Among some sailors, there was a quiet superstition that certain stars only appeared when a boat was telling the truth, not the crew of the boat. If your ship had nothing to hide, it would reveal the sky. But if it was carrying secrets, contraband, lies, or a cursed mango, the stars would stay out of sight. Warsome lies beside you on the deck, arms folded behind his head. Ever wonder what the sea thinks of us? He says, I think it finds us amusing, like pets who built too many containers. You nod. The boat creaks as if in agreement. Historians still debate whether these poetic beliefs had practical value. Some say sailors used metaphor to encode weather patterns. Others believe they simply liked giving the sea a personality, one that listened, responded, and occasionally rolled its eyes. Someone starts another story. It's about a sailor who fell in love with a sea current, not a mermaid, not a creature, just the current itself. He followed it for years, believing it whispered secrets in his sleep. Eventually, the current took him to a sandbar shaped like a heart. He lived there for 2 months, eating grilled eel and naming clouds. The crew agrees this is a true story, or at least one worth repeating. You laugh softly. The stars above seem to flicker in approval. You close your eyes, and the dhow sails on, steady and kind, across a sea that knows more than it says. You drift awake to darkness, not a scary kind, but the sort that wraps around you like a well-worn blanket. Overhead, the stars have gathered in full. No clouds, no moon. Just a sky so clear it feels like it might tip over and pour its constellations straight onto the deck. The dhow is still moving, slowly now, like it's trying not to wake the sea. You hear soft voices up front, Warsome and two others, speaking in the kind of low tones people use when they know the stars are listening. You catch fragments of a story. Something about a lost ring, a jealous wind, and a goat that predicted the weather with astonishing accuracy. You want to ask questions, but it feels rude to interrupt. Today's major historical fact. In some coastal Somali communities, it was common practice to hold evening storytelling circles aboard the ship. These weren't just for entertainment. Stories helped young sailors memorize directions, identify dangers, and understand celestial navigation. In a way, the sea wasn't mapped, it was narrated. Every stretch of water had a tale attached. The deeper the tale, the safer the passage, because you remembered it, you pictured it, you felt it. Geography and imagination shook hands and agreed to share custody of your memory. The dhow rocks gently. A warm breeze passes over the deck, smelling faintly of cloves and something leafy. Someone must have burned a bit of incense perhaps for the night, or perhaps just because they liked the smell. Obscure cultural tidbit. Cloves were once considered a sailor's good luck charm. Tucking one into your sash or slipping it under your tongue was thought to protect against homesickness, toothaches, and unsolicited ghost stories. Some captains required their crew to carry cloves in their pockets. Others simply traded them. Like currency, Warsome wanders over and hands you a dried clove tied inside a bit of cloth. For the dreams, he says. He's not joking, or maybe he is. It's hard to tell, and honestly, you're too relaxed to care. Historians still debate whether these nighttime story rituals were rooted in Islamic oral traditions, East African folklore, or Indian sailing customs. Most likely, it was all of them, folded together like the pages of a very agreeable bedtime book. A crew member hums again softly, slowly, a lullaby that has no real melody but insists you listen anyway. The song seems to loop endlessly, like a wave that never quite crashes. It's beautiful and oddly comforting, even when it doesn't rhyme. You lie back, and the deck cradles you like it knows your shape now. The dhow rocks, the stars blink. The sea sighs dot, and the story drifts on, somewhere between waking and sleep. You don't remember falling asleep, but you do remember the dream, a massive turtle wearing a sailor's hat, charting constellations. With a spoon, you blink awake to a pale blush in the eastern sky. The stars are fading reluctantly. The kind of slow, noble fade actors do at the end of an old stage play. The dhow is still, not anchored, just at peace. You've drifted into a quiet stretch of open water, and everything around you glows in muted tones. Sky sail-washed. In watercolor grays and soft pinks, you sit up and find someone's placed a bowl beside you. Warm millet porridge with dried banana and something vaguely resembling cinnamon. You're unsure how long it's been sitting there. Still, you eat it. It's oddly perfect. A little sweet, a little gritty. Like breakfast made by someone who's never in a rush but always on time. Today's major historical fact. Somali dhows often traveled in tandem with the seasonal monsoon winds. These winds, called kaskazi from the northeast and kusi from the southwest, dictated trade schedules, story rhythms, even social events back home. Sailors knew the months by how the air smelled. If it smelled like hot iron and ripe melon, it was time to leave. These seasonal shifts weren't just meteorological, they were emotional. The Kaskasi was called the longing wind. The Kusi was the returning. The sea had a calendar. And it cared. Obscure cultural tidbit. In some regions, sailors left behind tiny straw dolls before departure, symbolic watchers for their families. These dolls were believed to hold pieces of the sailor's voice, so their loved ones could speak to them during their absence. Sort of an ancient voicemail system. One sailor's doll was later found with an earring and a note that read, "Don't forget fish." Warsam appears with a smile and 2 cups of spiced tea. "You made it to morning," he says. "Most don't." You sip the tea. It's strong and floral with a suspicious hint of nutmeg. He raises an eyebrow as if to ask whether you've earned a nap after your breakfast nap. Historians still debate how much of these sea-bound traditions were passed down orally versus recorded in logs. Some say the sailors were too poetic to write anything down. Others claim the logs existed but were used as coasters and lost to goat-related accidents. A distant gull calls overhead. The sea stirs. Someone pulls gently on the sail. And the dhow begins to move again slowly, but with purpose. The next story, it seems, is waiting. You stretch. The wind kisses your cheek. You feel like you've lived a week inside a single, continuous breath, and the dhow glides on, the morning quiet, the sky gently waking beside you. The wind shifts, but only just a polite breeze, the kind that doesn't ruffle feathers so much as it brushes them aside with gentle amusement. You lean against the edge of the dhow, your fingers trailing the wood that now feels like part of you. Ahead, the sea opens wide and light. The sky is no longer waking but stretching blue upon blue, horizon stitched in the soft gold threads of morning sun. There's no destination marked on a map, but it doesn't seem to matter. This part of the journey was always more feeling than fact. Today's major historical fact. Many Somali sailors navigated using ilmul bada, literally, the knowledge of the sea. This was less a single method and more an intuitive blend of everything learned by heart: stars, waves, winds, scents, and silences. Sailors trained for years to feel their way, not just steer. Navigation wasn't memorized. It was absorbed through lullabies, meals, prayers, overheard stories, and quiet mistakes. A map drawn in patience. Warsam sits beside you, a piece of rope in his lap that he knots without looking. "This is how we mark the end of a journey," he murmurs, holding it up. It's not fancy, just a loop that returns to itself. He presses it into your hand. It means you can return any time you like. Obscure cultural tidbit. Some old dhows were known to remember their own roots. The crew would touch the prow before setting out, whisper a few lines of the cue lines of the crew would touch the prow before setting out, whisper a few lines before setting out, whisper a few lines of the kai. Old star poems, and then let the boat decide. One sailor swore his vessel once turned itself back toward Berbera because it forgot someone's birthday. Historians still debate whether this was belief, superstition, or a romantic way of avoiding blame when someone forgot their compass. But to the sailors, it never needed explaining. The dhow was a companion. It had moods. Sometimes it was the only one who truly knew the way home. The sun climbs higher now, and the sea mirrors it, a calm shimmer like melted pearl. The crew moves without rush, performing their morning rituals, rinsing hands in salt water, adjusting the sail with half-lidded eyes, sharing dates from a woven pouch. You realize you haven't spoken in hours, and yet you felt entirely heard. Someone hums that same endless tune again, the lullaby with no chorus. You almost know it now, at least the rhythm. It's a song for keeping boats steady, for coaxing dreams from starlight, for remembering that no matter how far you drift, the sea always keeps part of you in its pocket. And now, the story draws its final breath, not a stop, just a sigh. You settle deeper into your seat, the dhow beneath you a cradle of wood and memory. The sea rocks you with deliberate ease, like it has all the time in the world, because it does. And so, now, do you? The sky softens again. That deep, hazy blue you only find in watercolor paintings and half-remembered dreams. Somewhere, a bird calls once, then chooses silence. Even the waves seem to slow. Beneath your hand, the wood is warm, salt-crusted, sun-worn, shaped by 1,000 journeys, and one of them was yours. The rope Warsam gave you lies quietly across your chest. A circle, a reminder. You can return any time you like. Dot in the distance, the horizon blurs. You can't tell where sky ends or sea begins. But maybe that's the point. Maybe the best stories, like the best sails, are stitched with a little space for drifting. You take a long breath in. Sea air, stardust, something spiced and sweet. And then a longer breath out. Let it go. The dhow continues, but you don't have to follow. Not now. Let the boat keep sailing. Let the stars tell their next tale. For now, you've arrived. Close. Your eyes, let it all fade. The boat, the stars. The story. Sleep, gentle sailor. You've earned the stillness.